Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the 22. I'm your host, Glenn Davis, as always. Tonight we have with us Howard Vicini. It's kind of Howard's night here at SF Live. I was on Craig Udit's show earlier. I just did his show called My Country, and now he's here with us this evening. And he's here because Howard has put together a website, a blog called MuniOutrage.com. So it's really, Howard's going to tell us what it really is, but it's a blog site for people who have complaints about Muni. Before we get to that, though, I wanted to ask Howard a couple of quick questions on his show that he just had. Some interesting topics, questions and comments. Howard, so my first question is, you were up in Tahoe, right? And you were filming, and I guess the gist of it was the ground up there is naturally combustible, so be careful. Is that the...
I was warning people that there's been, during the fires in Southern California, there was a lot of talk in the mainstream media that didn't really have much to worry about up here at this point, that our fire season had passed. Well, perhaps in the larger sense that's true, but it doesn't mean that we're past the point that we can just exercise normal caution.
Did I misread that? That there was ethylene on the ground and that could be natural?
Oh, no, there is still there are large areas. The fire moved through that area. It wasn't a large burn like it was in Southern California, where large swaths were completely devastated.
Right.
This fire moved mostly through the underbrush.
Right, which is what it does if it's...
Right.
Okay.
And it left a lot
so
on
that
the
was just... I
ground.
wanted to ask a question about that. Secondly, you talked about the proposition results, and you brought up, I think, the number of people who had voted and that low turnout, the impact that may have for propositions in the future. And, I've heard other people speak about the turnout in '03 as compared to the turnout in '07. And I wonder if part of the lack of interest or lack of turnout is that San Francisco is a very transient city, and that many people aren't really looking to put roots down here, so they don't really vote for things like mayor or district attorney or, funds for the library. That's just my comment, but I'm asking if that's a sense, and just about 15 seconds.
I had thought that the fact that there wasn't really much of a race for mayor, and the fact that the sheriff's race was pretty much no contest. District attorney had
nobody
running. That left the propositions out there as being the driving force, and
propositions
just usually bring people to the polls.
Okay, yeah. No, it's just some sort of observation I've been having, but wanted to ask you. And propositions, yeah, you're right, cannot be a driving force.
But I suspect we're going to have to deal with an awful lot of propositions
in the future. Yeah, it sets a dangerous tone.
Right.
So the last part was the commentary you had about President Musharraf of Pakistan, the 50 cents a month. I think, I really liked how you put it in that context, because to me there's that larger issue of where do our taxes go in general. I don't think a lot of people know, what their money does in terms of, funding people in Egypt or funding people in Israel and funding, the sheiks in Iraq. So I think if people knew where their taxes were going, they would question the government more. But they don't put two and two together, that how we're getting support from Sunni and Shiite clerics is that we're paying them off with millions of American dollars, which pretty soon won't be worth the paper they're printed on, but that's a whole other matter. So I thought you made a great point in the way you broke it down about 50 cents for, everybody gives 50 cents a month to Pakistan. Was a great way of breaking it down so people could understand, and I just wanted to point out that it's just go ahead.
Well, if people object to their money going, again, I'd like to suggest that they call the White House tomorrow.
Pay the dollar.
In support of the people of Pakistan who will be marching tomorrow. And the number at the White House is 202-456-1414.
Right, okay.
Isn't that interesting that they shut down the interactive part of the White House?
It's interesting, but it doesn't surprise me. I mean, he's talking about asking them to, reinstall democracy over there. I'd like him to reinstall democracy over here. So, And I think the 50 cents a month is kind of interesting because, the Christian Children's Fund could use that money. You could
That's right.
feed and clothe a kid for a year, so the advertisement goes. So, interesting sort of apples and oranges of 50 cents a month.
Or the money that was denied to children for health care.
Right. Or that could probably go a long way for universal health care here in the States.
Right.
So let's get to this evening's main event, everybody, and thank you for listening to that last 5 minutes of my own personal interest and dialogue. So, Muni, we all know, has been dysfunctional, I guess, at best, would be the best word. And Howard here put together a blog for people to go and rant about. Howard, can you tell me what the inspiration for that blog is?
Well, it's been happening all summer. I have been visiting a friend of mine who's been sick,
Right.
and she lives in the marina, and I live in Hayes Valley, so I've been taking the bus up Van Ness and back
Right.
4 or 5 times a week for this whole summer. There's been several parts. I mean, that corridor has always been difficult.
Yeah.
But there used to be a number of other routes on it. Now it's just basically the 47 and 49 that serve that corridor. Like so many other buses in the city, they seem to travel in packs. There are long periods of time go in between the buses arriving.
Right.
Van Ness is not a particularly comfortable street to stand on.
Mm-hmm.
It's windy. It's just
Right.
full of traffic, full of fumes. So it had been building up for a time, and there was a particular incident at the beginning of the summer when I was injured and I was walking with a cane when I was left at the North Point stop on Van Ness, clear up by the bay, at 10:30 at night.
Right. So the whole inspiration was really, your continual use of the Van Ness lines, the lack of buses.
The last straw came on September 29th,
Right.
when was in a bus coming back from the marina to my home with some employees of the residence where my friend lives.
Mm-hmm.
And we were jammed into the bus to the point that it was dangerous. The bus was hitting, the undercarriage of the bus was hitting the tires. Every time we went over a bump.
Right.
We had been standing out there for a long time, and the driver, apparently feeling sympathetic toward the people on the street, was stopping, even though the bus was filled to way over capacity, was continuing to stop at every stop. And eventually, I got shoved into a seat, which was good. But then somebody was shoved on top of me. I've had shoulder surgery, and the woman ended up sitting on my shoulder for the rest of the trip.
Right.
It just isn't the way.
So you went home and you created...
I went home and looked up Muni Outrage, the domain, and bought it.
And I should point out that the Chronicles covered this.
Yes, they did.
And they pointed out that...
Rachel Gordon.
Yeah, and they pointed out your tech savviness, which made this, I think, very easy. And I want to remind folks, the phone lines are open, so any comments about Muni or sharing any of your Muni rage is more than welcome. We are on the air until 7:52, just to give you a sense of timing. So what kind of complaints have you been getting, Howard?
Well, the minute the Chronicle story appeared, the purpose of the site is mostly data collection.
Right.
We're hoping to collect enough incident reports, to determine whether the information we're getting from Muni about their supposed improvements is factual or not.
Right.
I can't understand how there can be, using the data collection method that they have, which I've experienced, how they can claim, as the mayor did, that these are absolute figures. In my estimation,
Right.
it's an improvement based on not collecting data rather than collecting data.
Right. And part of the problem probably is I believe their data system is as old as the police department's, which is about 3 decades old, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's museum pieces they're working with. But So, so your point is to collect the data. What do you think Prop A will have? What sort of an effect do you think that will have?
I think the pressure is on Muni now. They've been given what they asked for.
Right.
So now it's a matter of performing. And I hope that they see the effort that I'm making and that other transit activists have made in the city is a sincere effort to help, not to bash. That isn't the purpose.
Right.
The interesting thing is that the information that's been coming in, the form that's on our website, people can fill out while they're still on the bus, which is unique.
Mm-hmm.
They can pull it up on their cell phone, on their PDA, on their computer, their laptop while they're on the bus.
Wow.
If they've got enough room to operate.
So you can literally make a comment while you're still hot.
Right. And some people started doing that the morning that the Chronicle article. I can tell by the timestamp and the incident, the report at the time they're reporting that they're probably still in transit.
Right. So, but playing devil's advocate, couldn't I be someone for the city who would say, Howard, this is all great information, but, how do we know the person who made this was really thinking clearly at the time because, they were on the bus when they did this? And
how do they... I mean, the same argument could be made about the information that's going into 311.
Right.
I started telling you about the incident at the beginning of the summer when I was left at a bus stop. I called that night.
Right.
Called back to 311. I had called them for schedule information, and then I was left standing at the stop by an inconsiderate driver. I called back to 311 and I placed a report, and they asked me, do you want a formal response? And I said yes. Said it'll be a week or two.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a month or more went by. I called them again. They looked it up. Sure enough, the incident report was there. Said, well, you're being impatient. It's 4 to 6 weeks is the normal response time. So I waited a while again, and I called the mayor's office. And the mayor's Muni liaison, a woman, I'm afraid I don't have her name, told me that she would look into it and get back to me. I've got nothing. 3 nights ago, I called 311 about the same incident again. And the fellow there told me that their policy is 3 weeks, that I should have heard a response, and that he would resubmit it for me. 311 doesn't seem to be the problem. The problem seems to be when the information is passed on to Muni. That's where there's a lot of dead air time. There is no response mechanism.
Right.
How do we know that they are accurately compiling this information if you don't get a response?
Right. Also, I think what's a little bit scary is that you got 3 different answers from 3 different people.
Right.
So how complete can their data be? But so still, though, how would you deal with that if they questioned your data? And I don't mean to put you on the spot. So if you don't have an answer, Howard, I'm sorry.
We have designed the form. The fellow who designed Jeff Clevenger at Elysium in Oakland he does this for a living.
Right.
And I get very detailed information, the IP address, where the report came from, and we have an optional section where people can leave their name and email address and so forth. And people have been using that, have been doing that. Now, later tonight, we're going to release a link where people can just click on it and view every report that's come into us in their web browser.
Right.
Now, that will not include the personal information, but I can assure you that the reports coming in are coming in from unique URLs, and if the proof was needed, I have it.
Right. Okay. What kind, and not, I guess generalizing, what sort of complaints have you been getting? Have you been getting things about 311 or things about overcrowded buses or things about...
Mostly overcrowding, I think, is the most serious, consistent complaint. Probably the most interesting thing are the amount of detail that we're getting, which clearly indicates to me that people are really, really frustrated by the time they're making these reports, because on a forum, you would generally expect the comment section to be used by maybe 25-30%. I think that right now we're running well over 95% of the forms that are being reported that the comment section is being used, and it's, for the most part, is being used to the maximum, which is about 600 characters.
That's pretty interesting. That because most people will just fill the survey
Right.
and leave
That's
the
right.
comments blank.
I've also fielded, since the Chronicle article a week ago, I've fielded over 200 email.
Wow.
And we've got a whole lot of comments that have been posted on the blog.
Right. I think it's interesting because so many people use Muni in this city, particularly to get from the avenues down to work, because parking does not make any sense. That it kind of jeopardizes people's livelihood in a way, because they need to get to meetings or they need to get to work, and it's costing them money in a sense. How many? I wanted to ask you a question about.
Sure.
You said 600 characters. Was that in response? Was that in the comment section?
Yes.
How many surveys so far? Do you know?
Probably at least 100, a couple hundred email, and we've got maybe 30 or 40 comments on the blog site. But right now, people can go to the blog, munioutrage.com, and take a look at the comment section and see the number of people and the variety of viewpoints that are represented there. It's really heartening. I mean, to know that that what I was feeling, the frustration I was feeling, is shared, and I think that's why people are sharing so much, is because it's been building for some time.
Right, and it's not something where somebody feels alone.
Right. Because
everybody has.
That's right. And I have been talking to other transit activists who've contacted me since the story.
Right.
And Eric from SF Transit, another blog,
right,
has been interested in the data we're collecting and things. And
what's SF Transit? What do they do in terms of their activism? They're not doing surveys like yourself, right?
No, it's more of a blog for people who want to share information, and Eric comments on transit from all over the Bay Area.
Right.
And he's a very prolific writer, very thoughtful writer, I think.
Right. What about folks at Rescue Muni?
I haven't spoken to them directly, though. The Chronicle writer Rachel Gordon contacted them for comments for the story that she wrote.
Right. And what's the other one? Is it N. Judah Chronicles? Have you heard of those guys? They kind of were big when the T-line kind of broke.
Since I haven't been part of the transit activist
you're new to the game, right?
I'm new.
Yeah. You're off with a blast, though.
Well, this is just my own observation that there really hasn't been this independent data source. And that's really what I'm hoping that our blog will be, is this repository for people's frustration and factual information about their experiences, so that other transit activists can use it, or politicians can use it, or Muni can use it.
Right. What do you think the people who use your site and fill out those surveys, any idea what their expectation is in terms of timelines of, when you may get back to, what I mean? Like that ongoing, is there any ongoing dialogue, or is there some
of the blog comments, people are now beginning to talk to each other,
right?
Which is extremely good.
Yeah.
Because obviously I can't talk to each and every one, but and I've been posting some of my responses to the email on the site as well, to try to generate more. We've had some comments, some interesting comments about the responsibility of other riders. That some of the problems relate to the public behavior, which is good. We've had one driver comment, not very favorably toward me.
Well, that's what happens when you stick
But, you
your
know,
neck
I'm
out,
glad. I would rather hear from
right?
than not hear from it.
Right.
Because we all need to be part of this conversation.
Right, right. So when do you expect to start bringing this to the Muni Transit Authority?
I think we have a ways to go. We need to get the word out about this, and I genuinely appreciate your help in doing that.
Anytime.
We need to get the word out to everyone that this is an alternative place where they can expect that their data is going to make it into a database that's going to be presented to the mayor and to the Muni,
right?
And that it will be used in the most effective, most positive way we can to affect changes.
Right. A couple quick questions. We're running out of time. One is, any hopes maybe being able to sit down with Mayor Newsom's transit liaison?
I'm hoping to hold a town hall here at Access SF in December, and invite representatives from Muni and from the mayor's office, as well as other transit activists, to come in and field calls from the public on an hour-long show here.
Right. So
that's the first time anybody heard about that.
Right on. That's cool. You heard it here first. So I had a couple of questions about education and school routes. We didn't get to that this time, maybe sometime in the future. Please go to Howard's site. Howard, your site real quick.
MuniOutrage.com.
Here's these cards are going everywhere. So look for these and pick one up. And if you have any comments, please visit MuniOutrage.com and speak to Howard about that.
I look forward to hearing from everyone.
Yeah. Thank you for coming, Howard. Always a pleasure chatting. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. I'll see you next week. Tentatively, my guest is Board of Education Commissioner Hydra Mendoza. So have a good evening, and we'll see you next week.